fat lady sings in the ordinariness of life. You may be wondering what I'm talking about. Isn't this about the Christian faith, not fat ladies? It certainly is. The fat lady is the woman of some area, the fattest lady in the Bible. And after Jesus encounters her, this lady as good as sings. So why the woman of Samaria? Jesus meets this woman and has this conversation that leads from her being disinterested to becoming not just a disciple, but a disciple maker, where a whole village wants to come and know Jesus. John 4:39. Many Samaritans from the village believed in Jesus because the woman had said, "He told me everything I ever did." When they came out to see him, they begged him to stay in their village. So he stayed for 2 days, long enough for many more to hear his message and believe. They said to the woman, "Now we believe, not just because of what you told us, but because we have heard him for ourselves." You may think, maybe this encounter has got something to do with the 21st century situation. Disinterest to disciple maker. So what triggered me on this woman was a discussion between Jen and I. Jen passed a comment. She did not join a church. Her belonging to any group has a fuzzy edge. This is in contrast to the modern church practice where people must belong and even become members. The more we talked about it, the more I thought, what can I learn from this woman's interaction with Jesus? There are also gaps in the story. Twice the woman's claim to Jesus' authenticity is her saying, "He told me everything I ever did." She's deeply affected by a secret life being revealed, and yet Jesus doesn't directly tell the woman everything she ever did. And this story is located in John 4:4-42. Let's get to it. So Jesus had to go from Galilee to Judea. So we pick it up in verse 4. He had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from a long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. When we walk with God, we discover that God moves in the ordinariness of life. There's two routes from Galilee to Judea. One, the shortest route, passes through Samaria, but Jews hated Samaritans because they practiced a bastardized form of Judaism and claimed that they were the true descendants of Jacob. Most Jews took the long route so they would not be contaminated by the Samaritan scourge. But Jesus took the short route. John writes in verse 4, he said he had to go through Samaria on the way. Why? Because it was efficient? Maybe, but there are hints of a greater work, a greater power here. In Greek, the Greek's stronger. It uses the word ede, which in some versions it comes out as "it was necessary." No mention is why it was necessary, but commentators say it's the way of saying God wanted him to go this way without mentioning the word God. It's called the divine passive. I don't think Jesus knew what was going to happen. John just reads, just says, verse 5, eventually he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar near the field that Jacob gave to his son. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Jesus was weary, teaching in synagogues, healing the sick. There were crowds. There's a good possibility Jesus was peopled out. Everybody wanted a slice of Jesus. Is it possible that Jesus was emotionally drained? Maybe he just walked 20 k's that morning. Tell me how you'd feel after walking all morning in 20 k's. And it was hot. It was noon. The man was weary and he needed a drink. If it was me, to do more work, even ministry work, is the last thing I'd be looking for. You could say Jesus was in the ordinariness of life, the place where most of us live our lives. But even in the ordinariness of life, sometimes the boringness of life, God is at work. God was at work in Jesus. God to be at work in the ordinariness of life, we are doing what I normally do. You may find yourself, when you're just in the ordinary life, you may find yourself in a God encounter. The ordinariness of life is where we spend probably 90% of our time. Of course, God should be there, but we forget. You know, I remember once travelling back from Palmerston North, just outside of Harwood. I was heading back towards Waitara, and I picked up a hitchhiker. I was driving alone. I had room. I thought, why not? So I stopped, let the man in, and the man was rough looking. I thought, what the heck? He needs a lift. So, but I must admit, I did have a little bit of a nudge when I picked him up. I thought, I'll be kind for a change. I didn't know it, but this man was a seeker of truth. He'd been dabbling in meditation, into different sorts of self-discipline. He was a Māori, and so he's also into Māori nationalism. He was into art and alternative lifestyles. But I was able to talk to this guy, talk to him about Jesus. And it seemed so easy. It was just another ordinary day, but the encounter made my day. You see, I met, just in the ordinariness of life, something happened. For Jesus, it was just an ordinary day, but greater powers were at work. Tired, and Jesus was tired, and he needed space. More talk, more work was the last thing he wanted, but it was necessary. You know, Jesus was near a well because he was thirsty. The man needed a drink, but he was in the right place. You may not know it, but you are exactly the place God wants you to be. Someone else needed water as well as Jesus, and a woman shows up. Verse 7 says, soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water. You know, if we walk with God, and we are unknowingly in the right place at the right time. Often, let's say often at the right place at the right time. There's a saying, God is never late, but seldom early. God's timing is always the right timing. How often have you been at the right place at the right time? John 4 verse 8, he was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. Noon, a well, and Jesus alone. A woman came to draw water, and Jesus was alone. You know that very few people had one-on-one time with Jesus. Nicodemus got it, but it was after hours, at night. You can look that up at John 3 verse 2. For the woman, she was alone because no other woman wanted to be with the lady. No one got water at noon in the heat of the day. Women would usually gather at the well at dusk or early morning when it was cooler. This woman was out here alone because she was a social outcast. They were things like, we don't like people like you. There are hints of why in the passage. You know, she was married and possibly divorced, married to and possibly divorced 5 husbands, and not married to the man she had at the moment. You know, that might go down today, but this was a religious society. And besides, it might be your man next. God's way, it's necessary. Imagine God thinking to himself, Jesus, I have this person you need to meet. It's going to be one-on-one. Don't worry how busy your schedule is. I'll arrange it. And all Jesus wanted was a drink. And Jesus said to her, please give me a drink. The woman was surprised. This is John 4 verse 9. For Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink? You know, the next point is walk with God and the simple moments can become God moments. Jesus said, please give me a drink. Why? Because I want to present to you a theological treatise and get you saved. No. Why? Because I'm thirsty. It wasn't a predetermined plan on Jesus' part to win this woman. Please give me a drink. I'm thirsty. I'm in deep need of a drink, and I'm desperate enough to cross social taboos to get that need met. Please give me a drink. We assume Jesus intentionally crossed a social taboo to reach this woman. But what if Jesus didn't care? What if he thought, I am theologized out. I am peopled out. I'm over any more ministry. I just want me time. And I want a drink. What if Jesus did not know how the conversation was going to unfold? What if Jesus didn't know how this was going to develop? What if Jesus lived in a world filled with contingency, like the worlds we live in? What if his future was filled with uncertainty, as our worlds are? No one knows what is next, what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, the next hour, or the next day. That's our world. We know God is acting, but we do not know how it is all going to play out. This is Jesus' world. Please give me a drink. What the woman said next would determine where this encounter would go. Jesus said to the woman, "You are a Jew," and she said to Jesus, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" You are a Jew. Jews have nothing to do with Samaritans. But literally, the woman says, I am a woman, a Samaritan. In Jewish culture, women were one level above slaves. So where does this place this Samaritan woman? Look at the disciples' reaction when they returned from town. John 4:37, his disciples came back. They were shocked to find him talking to a woman. But what kind of woman? She came out to draw water at noon. She was the person God had arranged for Jesus to meet alone. To God, she mattered. Others might write her off, but she was the focus of all his attention. Verse 10, Jesus replied, "If you only knew the gift God has for you and who you are talking to, you would ask me and I would give you living water." I think Jesus realized he was meant to be with this woman, and he drew her into the mystery of God. If you only knew the gift God has for you, do you know the potential God has for you? Do you know that God believes in you? You ask me, Dennis, how can I say that to someone and speak the truth? I don't know. I'm just flattering them. How can I say if you only knew the gift God has for you? You can say this because they are human and you are human. You can say, I know the love of God. I know the love God has for me. He has for you. I'm a sinner, and yet I know God's favour on my life. I know from my own experience, that this God has this incredible God has a gift for you, and that gift surpasses all other gifts to you. He gave his life for you. If only you knew, Jesus continues, if only you knew who is speaking to you. If you knew who I truly am, you would ask me and I would give you living water. If we walk with God in the ordinariness of life, we are unknowingly where we should be, in exactly the right place, at the right time, where the simple moments become God moments. And someone like this woman is drawn into the mystery of God. I'll just give you an illustration. Early in our marriage, I worked for a mission agency in Hong Kong. And while I was there, I made really good friends with a guy called Al, an Australian. Al, it was a handsome dude, but he'd been warned not to have any relationships with girls. Well, he did. and he had to return to Australia. And I lost contact with Al. Years later, I went through training in Dunedin, and it was at the time when Jetstar started running flights from New Zealand to Australia, and flights to Sydney were cheap. So we thought, let's make the most of it. So Jen and I got a special deal to Sydney and booked a flight there during the Otago University mid-semester break. I wanted to attend Hillsong Church, which we did, but Jen wanted to go by train to the Blue Mountains behind Sydney. So we caught a train at the Blue Mountains and walked one of the tourist tracks in a procession with dozens of other tourists for a view of Sydney. It was hot, really hot. And so I yelled out to Jen, I said, stop, so that I could, she could wait for me and I could get a water bottle out of my bag and have a drink. And from behind, I heard this broad Australian accent. It says, I know that voice, Dan and Jen. It was Al. Al had married the girl that he'd been made to leave Hong Kong for, and the marriage had broken. And the process had pretty well burned. It had burned him really badly. And then Al had gone to the States and he'd married again. And at the time, he was asking big questions about God, about faith, and whether he was actually on God's radar screen. He'd returned home to his town in Australia for about a week for a relative's engagement. On the way flying over the Pacific, he'd said to his wife, his wife had asked him, he said, Al, who would you like to see of anybody here down under? And he said, he thought about it and he said, Dan and Jen. I know they live somewhere down here, somewhere down under. Yes, we lived at that time in Dunedin and he was on his way to Sydney. But someone heard. In our ordinariness of life, on a week's break while at Otago, someone heard. Unknowingly in God's place at the right time. If we hadn't stopped in that procession of people to get a drink, we would have missed Al. Moments became God moments. Jen and I were able to talk to Al at a heart level. I think it may have been able to help him with his own journey, his own faith journey. And Al kept on coming up to me and he kept on pinching me. I said, Al, stop it. And he says, I'm just checking to see it's you, Dan. We walked and talked the Blue Mountains trek, and then we hugged and departed. Al gave me an email address, but there must have been a mistake in it because I've never been able to find him. That was the last time that we were able to make contact with Al. It was necessary for Jesus to go through Samaria. He stopped at noon beside a well, tired and wanting a drink and alone, and a woman came to the well. If you walk with God, what could God do for you in the ordinariness of your own life? Walk with God. Just as I finish, let's just pray. And if you want to agree with me, put your hand on your heart and I'll just pray. Lord, I thank you that you are real, that you are with us in the ordinariness of life. When we don't know you are there, you make these amazing appointments and we're there for other people. And our moments become God moments. And I just pray, Lord, that if there is anybody here who has never met this incredible God who can change your life, I just pray that for them that might be the beginning of a journey, that my words, as foiled as they are, might be your words and go deep into people's souls. And for us, that we might say, yes, I want to know this incredible Jesus, that I might be like the woman of Samaria, but I also be able to say, he told me everything I ever did. If you want Jesus, he's only a prayer away. It's only a yes. Something to think about. And I just pray that you might have a great day. And there's nothing like walking with Jesus.